Her darkest days on antidepressants and in antidepressant withdrawal didn't break her. They forced her to find meaning in places she never thought possible. We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Teralyn and therapist Jenn, and this is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Before we set the whole conversation on fire, like, subscribe, ring that bell if you're on YouTube. If this show has ever put words to something you felt but couldn't explain, supporting it truly matters.
And for everybody listening, just remember that Dr. Teralyn and I are both deep prescribers. What does that mean? It means that we can help you get off of psychiatric medication safely for the brain and for the body. So if that's something that you are interested in doing, please send us an email at thegasittruthpodcast@gmail.com. Today's guest, everyone, I want to welcome to the show Sabrina Lane, and she is from Loving Through the Storm. Welcome to the show, Sabrina.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
You ready to share? Yeah. So did we find
as ready
you?
as I'm gonna be.
Yeah. Did we find you in the Facebook group?
You did.
Marriages one.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep,
so shout out
Marriages
to that
Destroyed by
Facebook group.
Antidepressants.
Yeah. Shout out to the
Yes.
Facebook group Marriages Destroyed by Antidepressants. If you guys ever wondered about your relationships, head there because there's a lot of chatter going on in there that I think is very valuable. So yeah. So I'm grateful that you're here.
Yeah. So tell us
Thank
why
you
you
guys
wanted
for
to.
having me.
You're
Yeah.
You're welcome. Tell us why you wanted to come on the show, Sabrina. Why was it important for you to
Well,
be here?
I think it's important to bring awareness to the fact that there's so many marriages out there falling apart, and like people don't know what's making their marriage fall apart. I know so many people who have separated and years later found out that it was because their spouse was on an antidepressant. So that's really just to bring awareness and make people aware that this is something that's real and it's going on out there. And, you know, there's so many people that don't believe you when your whole world falls apart and you tell them about it. They're like, no, that's not true. You know, your marriage was always bad. Or, you know, you get gaslit into thinking that your marriage was always bad. So it really just to bring awareness of what happens.
Okay.
Yeah, like I mean,
And my
when we're going to
headphones
talk
went
through
out.
this, when we're going to talk through this, I mean, like Jen and I have stories too. I particularly have one. So I think the biggest thing for me was always the gaslighting yourself. Really,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
is this real? Is it me? Is it you? What is it? Right, and understanding that it absolutely could be the psychiatric medication that you're on or that your spouse is on or that both of you are on, right?
Yeah. And you
Mhm.
sometimes you have to tell yourself over and over again. You know, you have to
Mhm.
remind yourself every day, this is really what's happening. You're
Yeah.
not crazy.
Yes. Yes. This is not me. This is something else. This is something else influencing me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, where would you like to start with your story? Let's get the story started.
So I guess I'll just give you a little backstory. My husband and I, or ex-husband and I, were high school sweethearts. We got together at 16. We had kids really young. We had a great marriage. In our marriage, we had a lot of like ups and downs. We also had a lot of deaths in our family, so we had a lot of struggles. But there's one thing that I never questioned, and that was whether we would be together forever. And in 2017, his best friend died from cancer. And we started going to therapy. We were both friends with him. We were both grieving. We didn't really know how to support each other. We went in for just, you know, a therapy visit, and the therapist said, "Oh, I think you should go to the doctors. You should get put on Lexapro. Tell them you want 5 milligrams. It'll take the edge off. It'll
Wait,
be easy
hold
to
on,
come
hold
off
on.
of."
Slow down, slow
Yeah.
down. Wait, the therapist actually recommended a medication
Yes.
with a milligram on your
Yep.
first session of a grief.
Yes. First session, he said, "I think you're depressed. Go to your
Well, yes.
doctor." Yeah. Ask him for 5 milligrams. It'll take the edge off. It'll be easy to come off of. And that's how it all started. Yeah. Kind
Wow.
of crazy. And then he went to the doctors and asked for the 5 milligrams of Lexapro, which made him horribly sick for the first couple days. And then he kind of seemed better, but I don't know if he was better or not. And then he was so great that I went and asked for some for myself and I got put on Prozac. So we were, you know, grieving and we're both medicated and had no clue what was going on. And it wasn't until years later that we kind of realized what had happened. He tried stopping the Sorry, my headphones falling out. He tried stopping the Lexapro because, you know, the therapist told him it'd be so easy to get off of. And he was about 6 weeks off and he was miserable. He was having withdrawals, but at the time we had no idea what withdrawals were. And so he went back and then he was gaslit into thinking that he needed this medication. The doctor was like, "Oh, this is just confirmation that you really need it." So he went
All
back
the
on. And
things.
then Yeah. Oh,
So
sorry. My
this,
headphone fell out. And yeah,
oh,
there we
that's
go.
okay. This therapist had a lot of power over meds, which is really interesting to me because Jen and I get pushback all the time about why are you talking about meds? You're a therapist. You're a therapist. You shouldn't be talking about meds. Therapists talk about meds
Yeah.
all the time, and therapists who don't know anything about meds talk about meds all the time too, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the
This is
power
yep.
differential and
Yes.
influence coming in full circle here in this conversation. Like I'm
Oh,
just
exactly.
stunned. I have never this show isn't about
Especially the
me.
first
This show
the
isn't about
first
me. It's not
visit.
about me. It's not about me. Like, okay, go ahead.
This is the second guest we've had on who said to us, our therapist handed to us exactly what the medication is we should take and the milligram of what
Yeah.
the medication is that
Yes.
I should take. And I just sit here in awe. Like if you're on YouTube, guys, you could see me like putting my head down because I can't even, I'm like, my tongue is stuck to the roof of my mouth so I don't say something because I'm just sitting here.
Well, the worst of all was I thought he's a great therapist. He knows exactly what we need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And here's the
Maybe
power
I
that
should write him a
therapists-
letter.
Yeah,
We
I need to
we-
write him a letter. Let me write
we
him a
just
letter.
had
Go ahead.
somebody give us some feedback on our YouTube channel about how we need to stop and sit here and stop bitching about our own profession about other
Can't-
therapists because
can't
Dr.
stop.
Terry and I are therapists. Well, guess the fuck what? Here's the deal, guys. Therapists hold a inordinate crazy ass amount of power.
Mhm.
So do
Yeah.
prescribers. And so when
Yep.
you go to somebody and you are in such a low, vulnerable, detrimental state, whatever a provider is going to say to you, you're going to go,
You're
okay,
gonna
good,
listen.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Because one,
Yeah.
you're the expert. Two, I trust you. And three, I am hurting. We are in so much pain. We are so much grief. We don't know how to grieve with the loss of this person. Like, and you take that information. So guys, we're going to talk about this because if the one thing like I could say is like,
Well, I just need to
just
back.
be curious. Like when,
But
when a
wait.
professional tells you something, just be curious about it. Does it actually
Yeah.
make sense? Does it make sense to follow the advice I was given? Like, is that logical?
But by the way, Jen, because Jen and I had similar training. We were in the same place for our clinical hours and training. I was told never to suggest a medication type or a milligram. That was like, don't ever suggest what to prescribe. And I don't know if that was because the psychiatrists were, a little narcissistic, but I never did. Like I learned that I'm not going to ever suggest a medication for anyone, specifically. Right.
Okay,
I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
So back to
Yeah.
Sabrina then.
Yeah.
Then what happened? So you got
So he was-
on an SSRI as well? Is that what you had said?
Yeah. Prozac.
I did. So it worked so great for him that I was like, oh, I should be on something too. So I went in and I told the doctor, I said, I think I have some OCD and my husband started some Lexapro and I think I want something too. And he's like, how about I give you Prozac? So I'm like, okay, I'll take Prozac. And what was really strange for me was he started me on 10 and then upped me to 20. And I could tell there was a difference. I suddenly had anxiety that I had never had before. And I went back down to 10. And then I didn't end up tapering off until after my whole world fell apart years later. But I didn't have I had side effects. Now that I can look back, I was definitely spellbound. I was definitely
Mhm.
emotionally blunted, but I couldn't see it. Because I just
Well,
been
that's why you're
spellbound.
spellbound. Like,
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
spellbound is.
But
Yeah.
I still loved my husband. I still loved my kids. So I didn't contribute what happened to me as bad as what happened to him. And honestly, what happened to him was he went back to the doctors. He had been on the Lexapro for about a year and a half. And we went to a routine visit. We were both in the room with the doctor and we were seeing actually a nurse practitioner. And he said, how's your medication working? And he said, it makes me really tired. I feel like I'm kind of just blunted. I'm just going through the motions, all side effects, but we didn't know. And so then he was like, I think we should change you to something else. I have this other medication. It's not going to make you as tired. You're going to really like it. Just stop this one, start the new one. And we left there with a prescription for Effexor.
I thought you were going to say
No idea.
Wellbutrin, but yeah, I was like, Wellbutrin.
Effexor.
No, Effexor.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Mhm.
Effexor. No warning, no nothing. I mean, he started it a couple days later and instantly he started to change. But at home, our house was kind of stressful. Our son had graduated high school. Our daughter was getting ready to graduate. Kids were coming and going. Things were changing. And so I just contributed all the stress. We started a new business. I'm like, that's got to be what he's stressed out about. That's got to be what this is. And it was a while. He was on it about a year and a half. And I think in that time, he had one recheck visit with the nurse practitioner, and nobody ever asked anything. And so when he finally went back, he's like, I want off. Well, what happened was he came to me and he said, I have no feelings for anybody. And I was like, well, that's not right. So I started Googling and I found this whole list of side effects. And it was like a checkbox. I was like, check, check, check as I'm going through the list. And so finally I went to him and I'm like, look, you need to look at this. I think it's your medication making you feel this way. Because he was ready to leave me. He was like, I don't feel anything for you. I'm sorry. I'm going to move out. And I was like, something's not right. And so when he went back to the doctors, he was like gaslit all over again. He goes back and tells them, like, I have no feelings for my wife. I want to get off this medication. And they're like, well, sometimes people fall out of love.
Oh my God.
And he's like, but you don't understand. I can't feel anything for anybody. Like, I'm
Anyone.
blunted. Something's wrong. And they were like, no, sounds like your house is pretty stressful. I don't think you're mentally stable. We should double your medication. And he was like, no, I don't want to double my medication. Like, you don't understand. There's something wrong. And he's like, my wife looked up, I watched you guys' episode about your wife, the wife diagnosing the husband. But he's like, my wife looked up the symptoms and I have every single one of them. And he's like, I want to go back on the Lexapro. And they were like, no, you can't go back on the Lexapro. And he's like, why? And they're like, you can't go from an SNRI to an SSRI. You can only go the other direction. And they were just adamant. They were giving him 150 milligrams of Effexor. And so he was like, no. And he goes, you don't understand. You can't just stop taking this. It's harder to get off of than heroin. This is what the doctor tells him.
Well, at least the doctor was saying that. I mean, I
that's
give
not
him
wrong.
props
Yeah,
for
you're
that.
yeah.
But he didn't take the advice. So I don't know that it mattered because we got
He
out
also
to the
should have said
car.
that up front. Like before you get on, just know this will be harder to get off than heroin.
Yeah. I believe if he was given informed consent, neither one of us would have ever been medicated. So we get out to the car and I said, well, what are you going to do? And he goes, well, I didn't take my pill this morning. I'm never taking it again. So I'm like, okay. So he stopped cold turkey that day. I came home and looked it up and Google told me 6 to 8 weeks, he'll be back to normal.
Oh, Google.
Well, that did not happen. Thank you, Google. I don't know who makes that up, but it was wrong. Very wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So what ended up, like, what was the experience then in the household? What was he going through?
Oh, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Like all hell broke loose. He was miserable. And I kept Googling it and looking and trying to find something. And like, there was nothing, there was no awareness back then. This was in 2021. So there was no awareness like there is today. I couldn't find anything.
Right.
And so, it said 6 to 8 weeks. 8 weeks later, he moved out of my house. So, I remember thinking, like, we have 6 to 8 weeks. We can do this. My headphone keeps falling out. It was rough. It was really, really rough. And then, all of a sudden I'm the enemy and I've been holding him back from this life. And it was really bad.
But all
really,
of that
really
was
bad.
being supported. But all of that was also being supported by the prescriber who said, well, sometimes you just fall out of love or whoever said that to him. Like that was the messaging that probably got stuck right in the brain because again, that power differential, when we suggest something like about your life, people take those words as gold, right? So somebody of power was saying sometimes we just fall out of love. Sometimes the relationships aren't
and your
right.
house is stressful. And our house was stressful.
Yes.
With 3 kids. Of course our house was stressful.
Sabrina, this is kind of might be a hard question to answer, but something that I think people don't talk enough about because we're being told by prescribers that this isn't possible. Okay. But that's grossly inaccurate. Did you notice like his personality changes either with him
complete change
or with you, like the actual, like, and I'm not talking about symptoms, right, guys? Like I want to differentiate this. Like, it's not like I'm sleeping less or my appetite changes or my mood is really low or I'm super irritable. I'm talking about like the way in which you actually view the world and view your circumstances. Like, can you speak to that for him? And if you experience that as well, because we're told that can't happen, that psych meds can't do that.
So I don't know that I really felt it myself. I would say I was kind of a blunted version of myself, but I don't know that my personality changed other than the fact that like I just didn't care about things.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
for him, his personality completely changed. I was always the more vibrant one. I was always the one that was more sociable. All of a sudden, he was like the party guy. He was the
That.
one wanting
Yeah.
to go places and do things. And um, his personality completely changed. He was a completely different person, and we had been together at that point for like 27 years, and he was like a man that I didn't even know for a while.
People would argue that that was the medication working, right? So if
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
depressed, that type of behavior is the medication working. What do you think are some other ways to view that?
I think if you pick like always tell people like pick a year in your life and kind of look at how your relationship was in that year and how you felt that year about the things that were going on, and events that you went to, things that you did, and who your friends were. And then look at it compared to now. You can see a complete and total difference when you step back and look at how things were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes this could be manic type behaviors, right? That people
Oh yeah.
experience, and they're doing things that are risky, right?
Oh
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, in that group, like the amount of affairs that happen are insane in that group. Risky behaviors, reward seeking behaviors, because you're so blunted that you're now out seeking reward. Sometimes people drink more, so alcoholism's kind of shoots up a little bit. So,
I
I mean,
definitely drank more.
you did, yes.
I did
Can you
when I
tell
was
us about
medicated
that?
back.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. You
Okay.
drinking more. Yeah.
So when I was like prior to being medicated, if we went out for somebody's birthday, I might have a drink,
Mhm.
or I might have a glass of wine after a long day at work, things like that. I was not a heavy drinker by any means. Like it was occasionally for a
Mhm.
celebration or something. And when I got medicated, I was buying wine by the case, and I was going to a
Really?
case a week. I mean, I was drinking every single night, 2 or 3 bottles of wine on the weekends. I was having margaritas or drinking beer on the boat. Like I was drinking a lot. Um, and it was a while after I got off of the Prozac that I was still drinking. But now I'm back to how I was. If I go to a Mexican restaurant, I might have a margarita or I might have a glass of wine, but I'm not drinking like I was. So clearly it was the medication causing me to drink more.
Yeah, so did it cause you to crave the alcohol more, do you think, or
It
just
did.
not feel it? Mhm.
I don't know that I was necessarily craving it, but like if we were going to go out to dinner, I would pick which restaurant I wanted to go to based upon what kind of drinks they had. Or I'd
Interesting.
be like, yeah, it's Friday. I'm ready to drink. What kind of alcohol are we going to drink today?
Yeah.
It was really bad. It was very bad. And I've heard that from a lot of other people. And I've told them, I'm like, listen, I drank a
Jen.
lot. I was pretty,
I'm
I was
raising my
pretty much an
hand.
alcoholic. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Well,
and
I
my
was
husband
full
drank a
blown.
lot too. And
Full blown.
all of
Mhm.
the like horror stories that you hear of all the things that happen when a person goes manic. I mean, my husband did most of those things. It was just a complete, total opposite of who he was
Yeah.
prior to
So
that.
this is the question I was asking about the personality change that actually exists. Like what
Mhm.
happens?
Yeah.
So it can happen when you're on a medication, guys. It can happen when you stop and go off of a
Yes.
medication. Like if you're introverted, you could become more extroverted. You all of a sudden may be
Yeah.
irritable and angry, and you didn't have that. You may have a crazy ass amount of motivation or no motivation. You might do risk taking behaviors that you never did before, or all of a sudden you're like a hermit and you're afraid of everything. You may have emotional instability, up and down swings that never existed before. Empathy and kindness and your ability to feel and have those and experience those changes. Like these are all just examples of like personality structure changes, right? And people are like, no, personality is innate. You are born with things this way. You carry these traits throughout your life. Sabrina, what you said, I think is really important, which is let's take a year or 2 or 3 of your life where you weren't medicated. What
I
was
like that idea,
what was
actually.
normal for
Mhm.
you, right? I love it. And yes,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
fit any of the model of what happened once we introduced or stopped, right? Or increased, right? A psych med.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did you do that as a way to kind of get out of the spellbinding, do you think? Like the assessment, like what was I like before versus what I'm like now? What was he like before versus what I'm like now? Is that how you kind of worked your way out
Yeah.
of being spellbound a little bit?
So, like, I kept saying it didn't affect me. It didn't affect me like it affected him. I was okay on it. I would have been a spokesperson for Zach, by the way. Like, I thought I felt great. And then I started gradually noticing
Yes.
things. And I was like, this is different. So I was trying to remember what my marriage was like too, because my husband was changing so rapidly and I had changed. So I was like, I'm going to pick a year. And so I looked back and I picked 2016 and I'm like, neither of us were medicated. What was going on in our lives then? Were we happy? What were we doing? Were we loving towards each other? Was I drinking? What was our spending habits like? Were we saving or were we blowing our money? Things like that. And then I was really able to see how much we had both changed. It wasn't just him that had changed.
Yeah, because you were like, this medication is the bee's knees. Like you
Oh,
you
yeah.
couldn't see it in yourself. That's interesting.
Yeah. All of a
So
sudden, I'm not stressing to have everything done and my house to be spotless. This is great. And yeah, no, it was not great. Not
you
at
know what?
all.
That's a really interesting thing because when I was medicated, I stopped cleaning the house the way I did
Yeah.
before. That's really interesting because literally I was in a hole. Like I wasn't like in a hoarder house or anything, but like dusting and stuff like that was things that I was
Yeah.
like, "Meh." Prior to that, I was doing all that every week. Like I was cleaning the house every week, doing all the stuff. And then I just kind of let it all go. Right. And
Yeah.
I let myself go too. Right. It's like, so the
Oh,
things
yeah.
that were
Me too.
once important were no longer important to me. So that it was interesting that you mentioned that house cleaning thing. Cause I'm like, oh, yeah, I never thought
Well,
about that, but it's true. Hmm.
I actually told people I used to be kind of a neat freak. My house was like so immaculate you could eat off my floors. And it went from that to like, hey, come on in, just scoot the laundry over off the dining room table and have a
Yes.
seat. It was
Yeah.
like a complete difference. And I mean, it doesn't really matter if you have laundry on your table, but it was very out of character for me at the
Yeah,
time.
Right.
I was the one who would dust the dust boards before somebody would come over, and then I just didn't even care. I'm like, "Just
Oh, for
scoot that
fuck's
aside,
sake.
I don't care."
Yeah.
That was a lot of work.
Okay. So you had said then, so at a certain point, then you're through the story here, then your husband ended up leaving. Is that
Yeah.
how this happened?
He left me exactly 8 weeks after he stopped the Effexor. And I mean, if we think back to when he first came to me and told me he lost feelings, he was pretty convinced then that he was leaving. But those
Mm.
feelings just intensified once he went cold turkey. And
Right.
he was full blown manic. I mean, he did all the things that everybody talks about,
Mm.
and there was no reasoning. I'm trying to tell him like, you're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking clearly. You don't understand. We have the checklist, and you met all the boxes, and it didn't matter what I had to say. So we ended up separating. We stayed married for a couple years before we divorced, but I was holding on for dear life, trying to like, he's gonna
Yeah.
wake up because I ended up finding I think I found like the surviving antidepressants
Mhm.
Yep.
page like on Googling. And from there I found the Marriages Destroyed by Antidepressant group. And then I all of a sudden didn't feel crazy because at that point I felt
Yes.
completely crazy. And then I met all these people and I cannot even express how great these people were. I mean, they were like my best friends. They'd stay up with me all night and convince me that I wasn't crazy and share their stories with me. And we kind of just built these amazing friendships. I have friendships all over the world now because of that group. And like from that, my life started to make sense. And then I mean, I did everything wrong. I argued, I begged, I pleaded, I hung on for dear life. I refused to divorce him. I mean, you name it, I
What would be
tried it. And
doing
I found
right?
what,
Like, but wait, what
yeah.
would the right thing have been in those situations?
So the only thing that I have found that actually works, like as far as communicating, because they don't want to communicate with you when you're the enemy and they want nothing to do with you. I don't know why this keeps falling out of my ear. Um, so the only thing I found that actually seems to work is smart contact. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. I didn't come up with it. I found it on a website one day when I was trying to like Google how to save my marriage. And smart contact has to do with like communicating in a smart way. So like if you're separated from your spouse and the sink breaks, you could reach out to your spouse and say, hey, like the sink broke today. Do you have a number for a plumber? Who did we use last time? And then they talk back, and then there comes some small talk, and then you're able to continue that conversation from there, where you're not calling them and saying, I need you to come home, the sink broke and I need you to fix it right now. You're trying to communicate in a really smart way with them. Also mirroring their behavior. Like if they're in a bad mood, that's not the time to ask them if they have feelings for you. But if they're open and they're talking to you and they're in a really good mood, then you kind of mirror the way they're behaving and communicate with them that way. You can go a long way with communication. You don't have to go no contact, which is,
Mm-hmm.
what most people say. Just pull back, go no contact, let them miss you. Well, they're going to miss you. They don't want you.
They don't
So
even
you
miss
have to learn how
themselves.
to.
Yeah,
Like,
they
how
don't
can they
like
miss someone else?
No, they don't even
the
miss themselves.
capacity that
Yeah,
how
you're
much
not teaching them a lesson.
right that's
Right.
the part yeah that's the part about this that's intriguing is the brain has actually changed. So we have altered the structures in the brain. We have altered the hippocampus. We have shrunk the amygdala potentially. We have changed the amount of gray matter in there. Like the prefrontal cortex is not firing. It's not thinking logically and bringing reason and deduction and induction into it. None of that, right? So it's an interesting piece
Yeah.
to this that I don't disagree with you, right? Like we try so hard to have a conversation or to try to make something work. And I think sometimes, one, you got to have the right timing with it, but that might be why.
Yeah.
The why behind it is because there is full-blown withdrawal. We've
Mhm.
changed the way the structure of the brain works, but even the way the person views themselves and views other people. They can't experience emotion. Like you're pretty disconnected
Yeah.
and pretty numb. I mean, you can hear the desperation in your wife's voice on the other end of the phone, and you're
Mhm.
like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm a label. She's desperate.
Yeah.
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 She's
Yeah,
annoying.
or
She's
then they say, well,
annoying.
you need to get a therapist, or you need to go get help. Something's wrong with you, not me.
Right.
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 You're not gonna prove your point. So you're better
It-
off just to
this is-
communicate in the ways
And
that
this
you
is the
can.
part that is crazy that people can't wrap their brain around. If your husband, your ex-husband, okay, during that conversation, like let's say you're calling about the sink, right? If there was a
Yeah.
traumatic brain injury involved on your husband's end, you'd be sitting there going, okay, well, yeah, I mean, he probably can't understand what I'm asking him, or I know that he can't feel emotion in that same way, or I have to be really careful with how I ask this question because there's an injury in that brain.
Yeah.
Well, the newsflash, guys, is that there is a synthetic brain injury, but we don't view it that way,
Yeah.
right? Like we're not
Mhm.
taught that. That's not part of informed consent, right? There's actually a synthetic brain injury on the end of the spouse there. And so it's kind of an interesting thing when you really think about it, right? Because we'd use kid gloves and we'd talk to somebody in a very different way if we knew they had a traumatic brain
Yeah.
injury or if we knew they had autism. I'm going to be very careful with how I present this because they can't connect with me emotionally in that way. But that's exactly what there's a
Yeah.
synthetic injury to the brain that has
Or
occurred.
let me add into, or just under the influence of something. So,
Right.
you don't talk to your spouse. You don't have a deep conversation with your spouse if they're intoxicated, do you? Like, I mean, maybe some people try, but it's not
Yeah.
going to go anywhere. But
It's not gonna
to
work.
me, this is kind of a similar, and people are going to freak out because I said intoxicated, but it's similar. You're under the influence of something, right? This thing is influencing your brain. And so we're trying to rationalize irrational things, right? We're trying to make understanding of things that we can't rationalize, and we're trying to rationalize. We were in and out for just a second there. Anyway, oh no, now I'm gone.
She's back. You're going
I
on a
think part of
tangent.
the-
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sabrina.
Yeah, I don't
All
know
right.
what happened. I think part of the problem is too that they appear so normal. They look like their normal self. They sound like their normal self. They can
Mm.
get along with their friends or their coworkers sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's obvious that something has changed, but especially somebody who doesn't see them all the time. If it's somebody you see like, once or twice a month, you're not going to notice how much they've changed because you don't see them all the time. You don't observe
Mhm.
it. So when you see them interacting with other people, and then you try interacting with them and they can't interact with you the same way, it makes you question, like, am I right? Like, are they really messed up? Like, as far as communicating goes.
Right. And so so how then how do you tie this in? Because I do want to bring in loving through the storm into this discussion as well, knowing that we've got about 10 to 15 minutes left here. Can you tell us about
Yeah.
what that is? Actually, tell the listeners what that is, and how that came to fruition for you.
Yeah. So my whole journey started about 5 years ago. And when it started, there wasn't as much awareness. Like I mentioned, I met all of these people in the Marriages Destroyed by Antidepressant group, and they built me up and they held my hand when I needed them to. And I wanted to be able to do that for other people. And throughout the years, I mean, I think I've talked to hundreds of unmedicated spouses where their spouse left them and they've divorced. Some of them have had success stories, things like that. And because I've been able to navigate communicating with my ex-husband, we're great friends now, because of smart contact and mirroring and things like that. I wanted to be able to coach those unmedicated spouses that are in the early days where they're questioning, like, is this real? Is this happening? They feel like they're alone. Their friends aren't supporting them. There's no closure. You don't know what you're doing. Your head's spinning. So I founded Loving Through the Storm to be able to connect with those people and to be able to hold their hand through the process and tell them, look, I tried this and it didn't work, but I tried this and it did work, and help them to realize that their spouse cannot control the things that they're saying. They really feel what they're feeling.
Okay, so do you find that a big part of what you talk with people about are one, like there's a whole level of connection and validating, like, yes, you actually aren't, you're not crazy. Like you're not, right? Because
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing, right? That we're constantly saying to people, like, no, your reality is actually very real. That you're not going
Yeah.
crazy, you're not broken, right? But do you find that a lot of the conversation you have with people is around this like bigger idea of informed consent? And you're having to
Oh, yes,
explain, yeah, like
definitely.
you're having to explain in the
Yeah.
process to explain to someone that they're not crazy. It also means laying out all the things that they weren't told that actually are risks that could happen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
explaining that to
I
them.
tell them all the time, pull up the FDA black box warning label and you'll see everything that they didn't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pull
and
up
more.
the insert of the med.
Pull up the actual drug fact sheet, which
Right.
they're pages long, everybody, by the way. If you actually dig far enough into the abyss, you can find them, and they are multiple pages long. Even the ones that don't come with your med, by the way. There's actual drug sheets that you can find, and they're 6, 7, 8 pages long. Like
I saw one for an antipsychotic that was 65 pages long, Jen.
And as we know, that is bargained information that's put in there too. So we actually aren't getting all of it.
negotiated.
However, we'll get off the high horse on that for a minute, right?
Yeah.
And say, like, that's I had a feeling what you were going to say is a big chunk of what I do is explaining to people what really informed consent. These were actually the risks that do
Yeah.
happen with these drugs.
So how does a person know when to let go of your spouse? Like, how does someone know when to let go?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think it depends on the person and it depends on what you're willing to put up with. Part of me, I let go after we got divorced. About a year after we got divorced, I was like, okay, I'm just going to let go. And then if it was meant to be, he'll come back to me. He needs time to heal and I need time to heal. Because I was so young when I got together with my husband. I didn't know who I was as an adult. I didn't know what I liked to eat or what kind of movies I liked or, what my hobbies were. I was a mom and a wife. So I focused on those things and just allowed him to sit on the back burner and then see where it goes from here. I knew the whole time I wanted to be his friend if I couldn't be anything else, but it's like he needs to heal and I need to let go. And if it's meant to be, they will wake up and they will come back. There's tons of success stories out there. But as far as like moving on, I think it depends on the person and what their marriage was like before and how long they were together, things like that.
Because you still had some healing to do of your own because you also came off the antidepressants, right?
Yeah, I tapered about 6 months after he stopped cold turkey.
And why
I
did
did
you
a
make
horrible taper?
So did I. Why did you make that decision to taper?
Well, I think because I was reading all these FDA labels and all these
Oh,
things that nobody warned me about, and I was listening to all these horror stories, and I was kind of spellbound. I was like, well, it didn't happen to me. And then I started thinking, well, it could happen to me. What happens to my kids if it happens to me too? We can't both go crazy. And
oh,
so that's what made me decide to taper.
yeah, that's interesting. Can you just share what is all the wrong ways? Like you said, I did a bad taper. What does that mean?
Oh yeah, it was horrible. So, I had went from 20 to 10, and so I stayed at 10, and then I decided to start taking it every other day.
Oh, yeah, you did
And
that. Okay.
then I started taking it every 3 days because I'm like, it has a longer half-life. I can do this. And then I got
Yep.
hit with COVID. This was like when the real bad strain of COVID was going around, and I was bedridden and I couldn't keep anything down. So I'm like, I'm just not going to take it. That was the
Hmm.
worst case of COVID that
Oh, you
anybody
know what?
probably ever had,
People do
because it
that.
was not COVID, it was
That's
withdrawals. I had
Yes,
COVID
I
on
was
top of it.
just
But
gonna say that. People do that all the time too, by the way. Like that is, I gotta normalize that for a minute. Like they get a
Mhm.
physical illness, and one, we don't tie the physical illness to withdrawal. Like we're not taught to think
Mhm.
that way, right? But two, then
yeah.
then we go, well, I made it how many days sick without this, and then you just stop taking it. Like that's
Mhm.
Yeah.
so
I
common.
stopped.
I hear that all the time from people. Yeah.
I thought I was dying. I remember laying in the bed and I like called and said my goodbyes. I called my sister and I'm like, I'm dying. I'm
I
dying
don't
of
mean to
COVID.
laugh at you, but
And
yeah.
she
I
was
don't either, but
like,
it's true. This is
she drove
yes.
2 hours to my house to check on me, and she like hazmated herself up. She had this like suit
Oh,
on and a
she thought
mask
it
and
was COVID.
goggles.
Yes.
I
Okay.
did have COVID, but I
Right.
wasn't dying from COVID. I
Right.
was dying from withdrawals
Withdrawal.
on top of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
COVID.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And so like I did have COVID at the time. And so she came in all hazmated up, and she's like, are you sure? Did you do anything different? Like, this isn't what everybody else is experiencing. And it wasn't until after COVID was gone and the withdrawals had kind of subsided some that I realized it was really in the
So
withdrawals.
so you reinstated then?
No,
You
I
went
didn't
you Oh,
reinstate.
you never
No,
You
did?
just
So you
kept
never
going.
no, I
reinstated?
wrote it out. And it
Okay.
was like the longest case of COVID because I remember like going to my daughter's cross country race at a park, and I was like, man, I can't even walk. I feel awful. This is it. And
Long
COVID had been gone
COVID.
for
This is long
months. Yeah,
COVID,
it was
right? Yeah.
long COVID. And I was like,
Oh,
then,
man.
once the veil lifted and I was able to see that it was withdrawals, I was like, wow. But
Do you
compared to
know
some
what
others, it
though?
wasn't as horrible.
But wait,
Hmm?
because your mind had the narrative of this is COVID, like this is something
Yeah,
else, this isn't this. I'm wondering if that helped you psychologically get through the withdrawals, right? Because a lot of times it's
it might
not always
have.
everybody, but like how we frame something, it matters. And if we're thinking it was framed in a different way, then that may have been helpful for you to actually get through the withdrawal because you're blaming it on something else, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah, if I was
you weren't
laying in the
fixated
bed
on
thinking I
withdrawal
was
there. You're
dying
like,
of
yeah,
no,
you're
I
like,
was
this
like, I
is
have
COVID and
COVID, I'm
this sucks.
dying.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And by the way,
exactly.
that explanation is agreeable to everybody. So, if you're like, oh, this is withdrawal, this has got to be, and people are like, you
No.
don't
Yeah.
withdraw like
Yeah.
that with,
Yeah.
but if you're like, this is
Exactly.
COVID, they're like, oh yeah, that sucks. Like this is horrible. Let me mask up and hazmat over there, So it's,
Yeah, it
it's
was crazy. You
interesting.
should have seen her coming in my door.
Yeah, but it is that explanation, like for self and for other people, right? Like it was agreeable to other people that it was COVID. It was also agreeable to yourself that it was COVID, because you didn't
Yeah.
know that it was withdrawal. That's interesting to me from a psychology perspective. So very
So
interesting.
Well, I think there are
Sabrina,
so many people that have withdrawals and don't know it.
Right, right. Coincidentally, you had COVID at the same time.
Yeah.
right, even if you're doing a really slow hyperbolic taper or a micro taper, right? You're still going through withdrawal. Like the whole
Yeah.
process of going off of a drug is withdrawal. The
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
fucking thing. Like
Yep.
it's not like you
Yeah.
have it for a week or a week here. Like I've been in withdrawal for 2 years and 6 months right now. Like I have been in withdrawal that long, right? And that's actually what's
Yeah.
happening, but it's not explained that way, right? And so the whole medical thing fascinates me because we do have a lot of medical things that can pop during this time, and we don't chalk it up to the going off of the drug or stopping a drug or titrating off a drug. It's
Yeah.
I got this terrible sickness. Well, it's because I'm around kids all the time. My kids are bringing home germs, right? Like
Right.
so I like that. I don't want to say that I'm like that this happened to you, but this is a very good example to share with people about about like, yeah, like the
Mhm.
the longevity of what I experienced,
Oh
like
yeah.
was likely tied to my immune system. Guess what? Your immune system is tied to your brain, guys. And when we change how the brain is altering, we're going to put you in susceptible spaces.
Mhm.
Well,
It's
I've
true.
heard of a lot of people too that had like chest pain or um, chest pain or migraines, and then they go to the doctor, and then they get put on a migraine medication, or they get put
Yes.
on a heart medication, and they're just in withdrawals. They don't actually have that, but they're like, well, I stopped that medication like 6 months ago. There's no
Or
way
6
this is
weeks
still
ago, it's
affecting
not in my
me.
system. My doctor
Yeah,
said
or
it's
6
not
weeks
there
ago. Yeah,
anymore, and yeah, so I
yeah,
should be all good now, right? Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
at the right, we have to do an episode. We have to do an episode on protracted withdrawal and just do an entire episode on what protracted withdrawal is, because that is exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about. And people
Yep.
are, that's a foreign term. So throwing that one out there.
yeah.
As we wrap up, Sabrina, like you have a story of like resiliency here. There's like meaning, like you found meaning in ways that you probably never really realized could be there. Is there like any
Yeah.
take home message that you would like to say to the people who are listening or who are watching this? Because there is a lot of meaning and suffering in what we have gone through.
I think the most important thing is that, like, most of the spouses that are waiting on their loved one to wake up after they've come off of an antidepressant, they're waiting on this success story. They're watching for this huge success. They're going to wake up, they're going to come running back, and it's all going to be rainbows and sunshine. And it doesn't always work that way. But sometimes you can measure your success differently. Especially if you're months into this or years into this, you've survived. You've learned who you are. You've learned how to navigate things. You're safely communicating. Maybe you're co-parenting again. Each little step needs to be measured. And sometimes we're just waiting on the bigger picture, but you have success right now in front of you.
Oh, I
I like that.
love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Well, if you guys have listened all the way through this, we have Sabrina here. Sabrina, thank you so much for coming on the show and
Thank you for
sharing
having me.
sharing your story. You guys have to check out Loving Through the Storm, which is Sabrina's coaching side hustle. That it's the beautiful things that have come from the suffering that you have gone through, right? So for those of us, you guys that are here, we are the Gaslit Truth Podcast. If you would like to send us your Gaslit Truth stories, please don't hesitate to do that at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com. Also, go ahead and please subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube.
Subscribe.
Oh
Put a
my God.
comment
Every
down there.
time I watch a YouTube video for years and years, I'm like, God, it's so annoying when everyone's like, subscribe,
Subscribe.
subscribe. And now I'm like, fuck, I understand what it means, guys. Like, please
Yeah.
subscribe. Like, ring the bell. Give us the stars. But no, seriously. But if you could subscribe to us on YouTube, and we love the comments. We love, give us all the stars, give us all the things. And again, Sabrina, thanks for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It was so great to see you guys.